Hey, folks. So today we're going to get kind of down and dirty. We're going to look at the role of money in politics. And there's a lot of interesting material with today's lecture. I call it Investing in Politics. I take that from a theory developed by Thomas Ferguson, who basically argues that wealthy people, corporations, treat politics similarly as investing in the stock market or the bond market or the commodities market, right? That they are trying to maximize returns on their money, on their investment. And so they're looking to figure out how they can use their investment in politics to get some return in terms of public policy or tax policy that benefits them as individuals or as a corporation, or it could be as a labor union or as in some cases, ideological groups. But the big money tends to come from wealthy individuals and from corporations. So, so if you think about that, then he says that look, what are political parties? Basically, political parties are built around blocks of investors, investors who help to shape the platform, the agenda that each party advocates for. And so you might have, for instance, trial lawyers tend to invest uh, in Democratic candidates because they tend to favor trial lawyers' views on, you know, on tort reform, for instance. Or you may get oil interests that think that the Republicans, will defend their interests better when it comes to drilling and tax policy on oil investments and things like that. So basically, industries um, they try to shape the political parties to meet their business needs. Now, it doesn't mean that they invest exclusively in just one party. And in fact, many individuals and corporations invest in both parties, um, but they may do so in different proportions. So basically, you get a kind of a block of investors across different industries or sectors that favor one party or the other. And then the political parties, their role is partly to shape public opinion and to the preferences of voters to match the position or the interests of the investors. They also recruit candidates who will reflect those interests. And of course, once they're in office, if they're successful in getting majorities in legislatures or executive office, then they're able to write laws or to write regulations that favor the business interests that support them financially. So, a quote from Ferguson: the real market for political parties is defined by major investors who generally have good and clear reason for investing to control the state. There's a lot at stake for them. A given regulation can shift a lot of money around. Blocks of major investors define the core of political parties and are responsible for most of the signals the party sends to the electorate. All right, well, if that we're going to take that as a starting premise. It's of course debatable. There are other theories of politics, but let's see how far it takes us. If we think of parties as investment vehicles for basically business interests, then we can think also about investment principles, the same kinds of principles that financial advisors use in advising wealthy individuals on how to invest their money. Well, they're going to want to diversify their portfolio across asset classes, meaning that They're not going to put all their investment into one candidate or not even one party. They're going to try to spread it around. Of course, they're going to reward candidates whose voting records meet their own needs and withdraw money from those who don't. Second is that they'll include assets of varying maturity. You don't want all your money in short-term investments or all in long-term investments. You want kind of a mix of both. Well, here that means advocating for a particular policy, a particular bill might be a very short-term enterprise. Investing in a candidate who will be in office 2 or 4 or 6 years, that's a bit longer term. Trying to shape the intellectual foundation of public policy, for instance, investing in the idea of supply side economics, right? Or other kinds of industrial policy. You invest in basically think tanks or in academic departments that will promote certain ideas that you hope over the long term will affect public policy. And in fact, you might even invest in youth groups on campuses, for instance, to try to shape the next generation of leaders and their worldviews. So again, a different time frames in terms of when you expect those investments to pay off. Another is that you change your asset allocation strategy as the market changes. So as the political climate shifts and you see that parties are winning or gaining or losing strength, then you might jump ship and change to a different party or a different candidate. You're always trying to stay ahead of the curve. And then you balance risk and reward. So you don't always just put money into candidates that might be perfectly aligned with your interests if you find that they can't win. On the other hand, you might be willing to invest in a candidate that isn't perfect from your perspective, but has a higher chance of winning. So these are the kind of principles that, and I'm sure this is not an exhaustive list of how the politics of investing in politics takes place. Now, one of the most important networks in American politics in the last 20 years has been run by the Koch brothers. These are two brothers, David and I've forgotten the other guy's name, but they basically got most of their money through the oil industry. Very, very wealthy. One of them recently passed away. The other one's still investing in politics. But over time, that they have built an enormous political complex, built mainly around libertarian principles, but also strongly favoring the oil and gas industries and other areas where they have particular investments. So it's a set of ideas, but also a set of very concrete policy objectives. Now, what's interesting with this little chart here is it shows where they've put their money. Not where they put their money, but the time periods over which they have invested in different areas. And the areas that are listed here are ideas, shaping the agenda, investing in, like I said, in think tanks and academics, supporting book publishing in your area, supporting certain journals, magazines. So trying to shape the debate. A second is policy advocacy. So getting specific on, we should be, for instance, opposing climate change legislation. Since they're in the oil industry, they're big on fending off attacks on that industry. Donor coordination would be trying to amplify their own impact by channeling donor money into entities that can, collect all this money together and then channel it to the right places to put the money into the places where it will get the highest return. So they don't rely only on their own money. They are bundlers. They pull in money from other investors who share their interests. Constituency mobilization. This is about getting out and actually developing groups that have mass memberships. The Koch brothers were really important in the Tea Party movement, for instance, and helped provide financial support to Tea Party chapters around the country. So you try to get average people involved in politics on your side of the issues. And then utilities is basically developing certain technologies or techniques of politics that, for instance, gathering mailing lists or developing artificial intelligence methods for shaping the messages that people receive about politics via social media. That's one of the big ones lately. So these are all different ways in which the Koch brothers channel their own money and that of others toward politics. And you can see that they sort of started out focusing on ideas. They've been investing the longest since the 1970s, really, on promoting certain ideas, libertarian ideas. And then the other organizations listed here under policy advocacy, Citizens for Sound Economy goes all the way back to the mid-'80s. And then you could see the other organizations there, some of which are more recent. These seminars, the annual seminars that bring together all of the intellectuals, the donors, the politicians, to try to get everybody in the same room and to get the network as a whole to be pulling in the same direction. You can see that those are started around 2000, looks like maybe 2003 or so, the Koch seminars. And then you have Americans for Prosperity has been, a really big, important group that focuses on gaining public support for the Koch brothers' agenda. You see there are other organizations there. They focus on different groups. So Generation Opportunity focuses on young people. You can see there's a group for veterans. There are groups for 60 plus association for older people, patient rights, focus on healthcare, Energy Alliance, oil and gas. So they have a variety of different kinds of groups that have different strengths. I'm going to show you now an infographic that you won't be able to read this because it's too small, but you can go back to this PowerPoint and click on the link and you'll be able to reach this site. This shows the three major organizations at the middle that channel most of the money. And then in the sort of dark shaded are organizations that the Koch brothers basically directly control. And then on the outer ring are organizations that are not directly, under their control, but which are influenced and funded by the Koch brothers. So those gives you an idea of just the enormous expanse and influence of this network. Now, in terms of channeling money towards politics more directly, there are a variety of methods. So first, there are individual donations that can go to either candidates directly or can go to these political action committees that bundle donations together and then channel those monies to the candidates or to political parties or to other PACs. You can see that individuals, the campaign finance laws limit individuals to $2,700 per candidate $5,000 limit to a political action committee. Before 2014, there was also an overall limit on how much you could contribute to all campaigns or political action committees combined, and Supreme Court overruled that law, and so since then there's no overall limit. So a wealthy person can, instead of being limited to 10,000 overall, they can contribute, $2,700 to 100 different candidates if they want to. A political action committee, as I said, bundles together contributions from individuals or from corporations or other organizations, and it contributes to both campaigns and to political parties. But its contributions, first of all, the money that comes into PACs is limited. There are amounts, as we see, $2,700 limit on individual contributions to PACs. And then there are limits on the size of the contributions that a PAC can make to a candidate or to a party. A PAC, the donors have to be revealed publicly, so their names are available either of individuals or of organizations. A super PAC has no limits on spending, so they can spend as much as they want. They do have to reveal their donors. They are not allowed to coordinate with campaigns. So you might have, an organization that is, working on behalf of Donald Trump or on behalf of Joe Biden, but they're not supposed to actually coordinate with the campaign, and they can't give money directly to the campaign. They basically do political advertising or voter get-out registration or get-out-the-vote efforts, supposedly without coordinating with the campaign. Of course, if you read the newspaper and you see what the campaign's saying and doing, then it's not that hard to shape your message and your efforts along the same lines. You can get a pretty good idea of what states, for instance, the candidate believes they need most investment in. So, that is not a very hard and fast restriction. And then we have 501c4s, which are the strangest, piece of this landscape. This was came out of a Supreme Court ruling as well. And basically it says, not a Supreme Court ruling, excuse me, it came out of legislation. And it basically says that social welfare advocacy groups that are nonprofit can spend up to 50% of their spending on politics. So they can advocate for candidates, they can advocate for issues, but the other 50% has to go to whatever social welfare issue or function that they proclaim to serve. So they might say, we're an environmental group. Well, 50% has to go to environmental causes, but the other 50% can go to supporting political candidates or issues. Again, that's a really loose and not very effective limitation on these groups. The crucial thing about these groups and what's made them popular is that donors are not required to disclose. The groups are not required to disclose the names of donors, so groups like Organizing for America that supported Obama, or Crossroads GPS that supported Republicans. That's Karl Rove, George W. Bush's campaign chair in the past. That was his group. So these organizations that do not contribute directly to campaigns and that do not have to reveal their donors are called dark money groups. Let's look. So the dark money, it's money that's spent independently of campaigns, and that where the donors are anonymous. So the 501c4s. Now you can see here that this is a group called OpenSecrets.org. It's a bipartisan group that examines the or nonpartisan group that examines the role of money in politics. And this shows 3 election campaigns, the growth of dark money spending. This infographic was created halfway through the 2016 cycle, so it captured the first year where they saw an additional jump in dark money spending. In the top 10 Senate races in 2014, 60% of the money was spent by outside groups as opposed to campaigns, and 22% of that came directly from dark money organizations. Here's the top dark money spenders: Crossroads GPS, Center for Protect Patient Rights, which is Koch Brothers, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, that's a business-friendly organization, of course, Freedom Partners, Chamber of Commerce, American Future Fund, American for Prosperity. A lot of these are Koch Brothers. So it gives you an idea of the flow of this dark money into politics. Basically, the campaign laws have been eviscerated by the Supreme Court or by congressional action that have made it much easier for wealthy people and corporations to spend lots more money, and to do so without revealing the names of the donors. Now this shows, this is kind of interesting. It shows on the left side, it shows the U.S. population and the percentage of those of Americans who donate $200 or more to politics in a given cycle. And what they find is that about 0.5% of Americans donate $200 or more to political campaigns. That $200 plus that group that 0.5% that contributes $200 or more constitutes 71% of all giving, and those who give less than $200 are the remaining 29%. So a very small number of people actually have an outsized influence on politics from a money perspective. This shows that in 2010, the social welfare organizations, this 501c4s that constitute dark money, it actually exceeded the amount given through super PACs, where at least the names of the donors are disclosed. This shows the amount of money given via proportion of money, not amount, the proportion of money given via full disclosure, where the traditional, you give money to a campaign or to a PAC, and the amount and your identity is revealed, versus some disclosure versus no disclosure. And you can see the amount, the proportion given through mechanisms requiring full disclosure has declined over time. Now, which organized interests give the most money? The light blue line is business spending on politics. The light yellow at the very bottom, that's labor. So when people say, well, business gives money, but so does labor, they just balance each other out, you can see that business spending on politics is much greater than labor, and labor's even lower than ideological groups or other kinds of groups. Let's look at, go back to Open Secrets and look at this shows us which groups are giving predominantly to each party. So let's look at, it shows the name of the industry or the sector on the left here, and then it's showing how much money they gave to Democrats, how much to Republicans, and then what percentage of that was to Democrats. And you can see we're starting at the top with groups that give predominantly to Democrats. So pro-abortion groups, 99.9 to Democrats, right? Groups that are called, liberal, 99.7. Gun control, environment, unions, women's issues, human rights, education, publishing, internet. These are all sectors that give predominantly to Democrats. Well, what about, you can see also now here, law firms, civil servants, clergy, pro-Israel. Now, what about Republican-leaning industries? Well, here you have gun rights, mining, agriculture, poultry and eggs, oil and gas, building materials, trucking, waste management, steel, home builders, general contractors, a lot of business groups, livestock, tobacco, automotive, dairy, business associations. Those are predominantly, not wholly, but predominantly Republican-leaning organizations. This also shows us the breakdown. You can see finance, insurance, and real estate together are basically about even. They split their money between Republicans and Democrats. Miscellaneous business also splits pretty evenly. Health is a bit more leaning toward Democrats. Communications, electronics, and lawyers and lobbyists, they're more Democratic. Labor, strongly Democratic. Energy, strongly Republican. Agribusiness, Republican. Construction, Republican. Transportation, defense, Republican. Now, another feature of money in politics is that the vast majority of money is spent on incumbents. So you find somebody who votes your way, and then you spend money to try to get them reelected. And so you can see here the purple represents money going to incumbents in each of these industries. And in every one, with the somewhat the exception of ideology or single issue areas, the money is going overwhelmingly to incumbents. Challengers are the red bars, parts of the bar, and then the blue all the way to the right, that's open seats. So the vast majority of money in politics goes toward sure bets. You find a candidate, votes the way you like, you try to keep them in office. It's good because you know what you're getting because you have their voting record. And two, incumbents already have an enormous advantage, and so the risk-reward is pretty high. This shows the 2018 Senate and House races, the incumbent fundraising advantage. You can see in the Senate, the average incumbent raised, the incumbents raised on average over $15 million. Whereas challengers over a little over $2 million. So huge disparity, about 7 to 1. And then in the House, the incumbents raised on average about almost 1.9 um, million per candidate, and challengers about 400,000 per candidate. So a little less than about a 4-to-1. So incumbents are heavily favored. You can see this here. This is partly a function of where the money's going. It is going to incumbents, and incumbents win. So it's not surprising that we see here in the House and in the Senate that the percentage of races won by top spending candidate is about between 80 and 100. So whoever spends more has excess of 80% chance of victory. That's why there's so little turnover until people retire. All right, so big picture, one way to look at politics is as an investment market. And people who have money invest that money in politics because things, policies and regulations can make a huge difference to their bottom line. And so you invest in a party or in both parties. You invest in candidates who will serve your interests. And as we'll see in some of our readings, the correspondence between congressional voting and business interests is much higher than the correlation between congressional voting and public opinion polls on issues. So the Congress votes much, more in favor of business preferences than public preferences. That's discouraging, but that is the pattern. All right, well, that wraps it up for today. Thanks.